Racism is a social problem that has been around for many years. Ignorance of the differences between others and ourselves has bred a volatile racism that can affect anyone, anywhere in the world. According to the Webster Dictionary, racism is defined as a belief that race is the primary determinant of human rights and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. In the 13th and 14th centuries, Jewish individuals were identified with the devil and witchcraft. Aside from biblical references, this may be one of the first signs of racist thinking. During the Renaissance and Reformation, Europeans were coming into more and more contact with people of darker skin from Africa, Asia, and America, and began to judge them. During the Enlightenment, the subject of race moved away from the Bible and more toward the natural world, being subdivided into different groups. The 19th century brought heavy slavery throughout the United States and Europe, and in the 20th century the Holocaust happened, leaving the Jewish community and many others devastated. Although it doesn't seem as prevalent today, racism still exists in the workplace, schools, and in communities. Many actions can be considered racist. Main types of racism are spatial, environmental, institutional, internalized, and individual racism. Spatial racism is the segregation of different people in residential settings. An example of this is affluent whites living in up-and-coming suburbs, while Hispanics, African Americans, and other minorities live in deteriorating areas of cities and older suburbs. Environmental racism is the disproportionate exposure of specific racial groups to toxic substances. According to Robert Bullard, 3 out of 5 African Americans and Latinos live in communities with old toxic waste sites. Institutional racism refers to established and customary social arrangements that exclude people on the basis of race. This can be found in government, businesses, and schools, both public and private. Internalized racism is when minorities see themselves and their communities through the eyes of the most dominant culture. They apply the negative stereotypes to themselves. This can include patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving, and can lead to serious oppression. Individual racism is when people grow up with a sense of racial superiority, whether conscious or unconscious. It is acts by individuals that harm members of another race. An example could be locking your car door when a person of a certain race walks by. Many sociological concepts can be applied to the subject of racism. Racial ethnic groups are groups labeled as a race by the wider society and bound together by their common social and economic conditions, resulting in distinctive cultural and ethnic characteristics. In the United States, specific cultures and races can be found in specific regions. This definition of racial ethnic groups includes the discrimination of socially constructed racial groups and their distinct cultures. The most prevalent of these groups are African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, and Native Americans. Racial stratification is a system of inequality where race is the most important criteria for rank in society. This system shows itself most in the workplace. Racial stratification tends to offer white people the better occupations, income, and education. As a general statistic, minorities are seen in positions such as housekeeping, general labor, and in some cases sweatshops, whereas white people are seen in high leadership roles. Policies related to affirmative action, school desegregation, and voting rights have not helped racial equality. Most states have their individual human rights commissions in the effort to create more racial equality. A widely known commission is Britain's Commission for Racial Equality, which has helped pass laws and regulations that have truly helped the pursuit of racial equality in Britain. The YWCA USA is one of the oldest and largest women's organizations in the nation, with the goal of eliminating racism and empowering women. In their individual families and communities, Americans are taught their own views on race and racism. Many children grow up in a sheltered life where it is hard to form their own opinion. Children need to be educated young on cultures across the world, so their ignorance does not breed racism like generations before them.